So I had a bit of a problem writing this week's sermon. No matter how I worked it out, there were always two men that were the center of this sermon, and one of them was this way, and one of them was that way. And you know what? Every single time I read what I had written, it just sounded way too political. It sounded like, whoa, I cannot go in these places. This is not... And besides that, I think God is trying to speak to something so much deeper than even what's going on in the news right now. There's something much more that God, I think, wants to talk to us about here. It's the duality that one of these people thinks that they are justified in the eyes of God, and one of them thinks that they need God more than anything else in the world, that they recognize themselves for who they are, and they're seeking God's forgiveness. Whereas the other person, he is exalting himself rather than God and what God has done for him and will do for him. As a matter of fact, the one man doesn't even think he needs God in his life because he's already so great, he's already so wonderful, he's not like anybody else. The other man is the man, the tax collector, the sinner, the man beating his breast on the ground, who recognizes his need for God's mercy and God's love. A large part of what we do is even recognizing that we need to be forgiven in the first place. If you have conversations with unchurched friends, people in your life who don't go to church or something like that, they would often say, and I've had these conversations, that this whole idea that I need to be forgiven for something, I don't get it, I don't understand it. Well, the thing is that we need God in every aspect of our lives, that we are sinners. We don't often think of ourselves as sinners. We don't want to think of ourselves as sinners. We want to think of ourselves as walking in just and upright ways. But the truth is that we are sinners through and through. So, as a matter of fact, the only way that we can do good is through the power of the one who is good. Through Christ within us, guiding us and leading us to do good. Remember that story from John chapter 8? The woman who was about to be stoned to death. She was caught in the act of adultery. Apparently there was no man present because he's not being stoned to death. The woman is dragged out and about to be stoned to death, and Jesus witnesses this. And he goes and he stands in between the crowd and the woman, and he says, "Those without sin, let them be the ones to throw the first stone." Everyone is a sinner. Everyone needs God. Perhaps our biggest problem stems from when we think that someone else is a bigger sinner than we are. This woman caught in adultery is a bigger sinner than we are. All sin is sin. There is no hierarchy of sin. That's why all sin needs to be forgiven. In our story for today, the one man who thinks he is righteous and is arrogant about his pride in who he is, he doesn't think that he needs to be forgiven for anything. What did he do? The very act of that pride and that arrogance, thinking that you don't need God's forgiveness in your life, is his sin. And the other man beating his breast. God, you know what kind of a sinner I am. You know what I've done. You know what I do. You are the only source of help for me. You are the only source of salvation. I need you in my life. There's something else about this text, though, that I want to talk about. And it's really a question, what kind of person are you? Because I see these two men and I think to myself, well, which one would I like to have as my friend? Would I like this one gentleman who is so sure of himself and thinks he's better than everybody else, or this other man who is very humble about knowing who he is? What kind of a person would be these friends of these men? Are we to be the type of people that when people leave our presence, they leave feeling a little bit better about themselves? Because if I was praying next to this other man, I would feel pity, and I would feel empathy, and I would feel sympathy. I would feel all of those emotions and love that he's able to come in that way before God in order to confess all that he is. And the other man who goes around talking about how wonderful he is in the temple, and I'm sitting there knowing what kind of a sinner that I am, I would feel much worse and much worse and much worse about myself. It got me thinking about how do people react to us in our lives? Are we arrogant about our position in life? Are we arrogant about our relationship with God even? Or do we have the humility to know that everyone struggles the way that we struggle, and that even those that aren't aware of their need for God still need God deeply in their life? Do people leave your conversations with you feeling better about themselves? Feel like somebody cares? Even to sit with someone and to listen to what they're going through in life. Sometimes you meet a friend who you haven't talked to in a very long time, and you're sitting there for coffee, or maybe it's over the phone, and they're talking about themselves and talking about themselves and talking about themselves, and okay, I gotta run now, talk to you later, and they hang up the phone, or they leave the coffee shop, and you're, well, I just spent an hour and a half talking about them, and I have things going on in my life too. I would have liked to have talked about it. It's those friendships that you were constantly calling the other person on the phone. And every now and then you would like to talk to them, relieve your burden to them. But that's its own special kind of ministry, isn't it? To remain friends with people who perhaps if you didn't call, would never call you. Does that mean you stop being friends with them? And does that mean that you drop them from your lives? Sometimes that happens, and sometimes that needs to happen, and other times it's, that's a very special ministry, to be able to sit and talk to somebody and listen and listen and listen. Even though they don't ask about how you're doing, about your kids, about what's going on in your life. That's why maybe we need those friends that we forget that we never ask them about their lives, and we're always talking about our own lives, and we don't realize it, right? Could it be then that we are a little of this righteous Pharisee and a little bit of this sinful tax collector at the same time? And we don't even realize which we're being at any moment? Live your life and have those interactions with people. Let them know that you care. Have people in your life that you can also relieve your burden to and talk to. Opening up your heart to. Give and take as friends. And remember that God gives and takes as our God, listening to us. Our prayers are not one-sided like some of those friendships. God is talking. Sometimes we just need to slow down to listen. And sometimes we'll hear God raise us up from our fallen path. And sometimes we'll hear God slow us down and bring us down to earth and remind us of who we are. Patience, humility, love, understanding. So wherever you find yourself in life, whatever kind of situation, whatever kind of conversation you have with whoever you're talking to in your life, leave them feeling cared for, leave them feeling full of God's love and grace and mercy, even if it's for a brief moment. Spread the good news of God, a God that has given you so much, and the salvation offered by Jesus Christ. Amen.